Social media has done a lot of good things and bad things for the outdoors, but there's also a lot of things social media gets wrong about the outdoors. The mountains aren't simple, they're not always perfect, and the mountains are a lot more dangerous and unforgiving than what we see while we're doom scrolling. Here's some things that I think social media gets wrong about the outdoors. First one is that every hike needs to be epic or extreme. You need to have big exposure, big summits, big views, beautiful sunsets, all that. You don't need any of that in the outdoors. You just need to get outside. The reality is most skills are not built on epic days. They're slow progressions on even a lot of boring days to get you to those epic days. Those days are super awesome when you have just spectacular views. But if you're only chasing those super amazing views, you might not be able to get out as much as you really want to. So for me, it's more about just getting outside, even just on a little local trail like this. Yeah, there's some absolutely beautiful views behind me, but they're not super, super epic, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And just remember, epic days are built on a lot of boring days. The next one is the mountains are safer than they look online. You see well-marked trails, easy bailouts, a lot of success, because a lot of people don't show their failures. But if you go out and you expect the trails to be marked and have signage and all these safety measures, you're setting yourself up for something bad to happen, because you don't have a plan. You don't have, what if this happens? What if that happens? None of that. So, and the reality is, weather changes fast. Small mistakes compound over time. Help is a lot further away than you actually realize. And just know the mountains don't feel dangerous until they are. Another one, no crowds. A lot of times I will wait to make sure people are out of the way to get certain shots, or even take some of the people out of my shots. But the reality is, a lot of these places are crowded. So if you're going to like a national park or a place you've seen a bunch online and you expect no crowds, you might be a little disappointed. And on that note, crowds and popularity doesn't necessarily make it safer. Crowds and illegal parking, or just a lot of parking, it will actually slow down a lot of your rescue attempts, or even animals. There's a perception that just because you're on a popular trail doesn't mean you're going to run into a predator. That's not always the case. Those are actually the ones that aren't going to be running away when they smell a human. So in my mind, those ones are actually a little bit more dangerous. The next one's actually about packs. Packs don't have to be ultralight. Ultralight's a skill set that is built up over time from experience. Beginners shouldn't necessarily be trying to go ultralight with hitting target weights and possibly taking equipment out so they can hit target weights. Beginners don't have the skill set to know what they should leave behind and what they shouldn't. Yes, you don't want to carry a 90-pound pack into somewhere, but you also don't want to sit there and leave critical gear behind that is possibly going to keep you safe because you're trying to hit a target weight. Just know your warmth, water, and emergency gear, that actually does save lives. So those are things you definitely don't want to skimp on when you're out, especially as a beginner. The next one is lack of adversity. I love seeing beautiful slow-mo photos of beautiful scenery, but there's a lot of adversity out in the outdoors between, altitude sickness, dehydration, sprained ankles, just the mental grind of trying to get to where you're going. Just know in the mountains and the outdoors, adversity is normal. Going camping, like having something go wrong, it's gonna happen. But it's really about how you react to that one thing that's going wrong before a second or third thing goes wrong. And then we have pushing through is always brave. Not necessarily. Pushing through some fatigue, pushing, past your limits a little bit, that's fine. But seeing weather roll in, no, turn around. Don't want to get struck by lightning. You're starting to feel dizzy, out of breath. You take a break, it doesn't get better. That's altitude sickness. You need to get down. So as somebody that has pushed through a lot of physical adversity throughout his life, you have to know your limits of where your line is, what adversity you're willing to accept, and when to actually have a turnaround because it's just too much or too dangerous. And a lot of times we focus on the summit as the goal. The summit's not the goal. The trailhead's the goal. Getting back home is the goal when you're getting out in the outdoors. Then we have comparison culture. It makes very dangerous situations, and I fall victim to this all the time, and I recognize that. But comparing yourself to others, what they've accomplished, can put you in those dangerous situations that you're not necessarily prepared for. So for me personally, I have to sit back and go, do I actually have these abilities, or do I need to have some more of those boring days to work on those skills to make sure I'm not putting myself into those super dangerous positions? Because I do promise my family every time I go out, especially solo, that I'll be back, and I like to keep my promises. Finally, the last one is taking the outdoors more seriously. I don't know how many times I've run into people with no map, no water, no plan, no backpack, and if something goes wrong, it's, who knows? But a lot of them for the most part, make it out. But when there is one, you'll be glad that you had all that extra stuff. We do have the jokes about, going up hiking poles and hiking boots and all that, and then you pass like a girl carrying a Barbie and like Crocs or something. And yeah, that's kind of true. But at the same time, you have to respect the outdoors. So once you decide not to respect the outdoors, it'll humble you. And it'll humble you in a way that you don't want to be humbled in, but it's a humbling that you need because you're not respecting it. I've been humbled by these mountains more times than I can count. I have a saying after most hikes where I always say, I once again overestimated myself and underestimated the mountain. So you don't need epic, you don't need extreme, you don't even need the perfect weather conditions, but you do need to take the mountains seriously.